Welcome to the Alive with Purpose podcast. This is Megan, and today we have a special guest. He graduated with a degree in finance and is now getting his master's in business and is running D1 for GCU. Today we're going to talk about running D1 for a college or just in a college set in general. And if you're a high school student running and struggling with integrating faith in running, or if you're a high school student wanting to run in college and you're unsure about how to integrate faith in such a demanding sport, this is a great podcast, and Spencer's a great person for this because he's run since 7th grade and has been through so many ups and downs, injuries, being cut from teams, making the team, so many different things, and all throughout he's trusted God. So share a little bit about your story to the listener.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. So my story really starts out in middle school. I started track in 7th grade and really just became part of my life. Pushed to make varsity in high school. Really always wanted to be one of the best on the team, definitely one of the best in the state, and had a really great community around me in middle school and getting into high school that really helped me develop as an athlete. But as many athletes figured out in COVID, it was not very easy, and I saw a lot of setback there. So coming into college, I really didn't have the times I needed to run at any level that I wanted to, and so I had no recruiting emails, no offers from any schools, and I really came to a point where I thought I was going to end it with athletics. And it was when I came to GCU, I just decided to come here for school, and after the first week, I realized I wanted to keep pursuing athletics. And so I got back into training and reached out to the coach, trying to make the team, but my times weren't fast enough. So this was really the beginning of my journey in college athletics, where I realized there was a lot more to it than I expected, and trusting the Lord was a definite thing I had to do.
So even though there are challenges with getting recruited, also during his senior year, he's working on his feet all day, and that is another challenge and another setback. And if you're a runner, you know there's so many challenges with running. It's like you may have a bad day, you may get sick, you may be working long hours, and there are just so many setbacks that are out of your control. And so, how did you get through that? And what advice would you give to a high schooler who wants to get better, wants to be the best in the state, wants to make a college team, but is struggling with those challenges? How do you trust God through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it comes down to multiple things, making sure your priorities are in the right place. It's easy to put running as number one, or your sport, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, like, everything's going to end at some point. And when it ends, it really doesn't matter too much. So putting your priority as the Lord, and then everything else kind of falls under it. But I think it's important when you're balancing different things in life to make sure you're putting Christ as the focus and as the main priority. And so there's a analogy where it's the food tray at school, and you get the tray and then you put all the food you want, all the sides, all the entrees on the tray, and you take the tray. And if you put Christ as one of the pieces on the tray, then something else is the tray of your life. But the important thing to do is to make sure God is the tray and everything else is on the tray. So God makes up every aspect of your life, and there's not something else that is at the center. And so I think that's key to remember wherever you're at in athletics or any other aspect of life. You have to keep Jesus as the center. And it's easy to put other things as the center, but everything is going to fade. Everything is going to have its ups and downs, but you have to keep your roots in the Lord.
That's so good because it's so easy, especially with this sport like running. Putting your identity in that is like never going to bring you like full satisfaction because you may get injured or something may happen. And yeah, having God as the center is huge. But also in high school, you ran for a public school and you were one of the only Christians there. So how did you have Jesus as the center?
Yeah. It's a tough one for sure. I think in high school, it wasn't something I focused on too much, but I think it's important. No matter where you're at, there's always a place to witness. And even if you're not really going after witnessing, the way you carry yourself, the way you act, the way you react to performances, it all gets noticed, and all that your teammates see that, and if they see something different, they get interested. They want to know why, and that's definitely something that I had to learn as I've done athletics, where it's very easy for me to, after a race, if I do badly, to just run my mouth and just talk about it for the rest of the night. And it's gotten to the point where I've had teammates who are like, "Bro, we don't care," and I've realized like that's a bad witness. Like I shouldn't be complaining about a race for sure, but it also is showing people I'm putting my identity in this thing. And so that's something that's been important for me to learn, where it's like, okay, God is my root, God is my center, and I don't have to express how frustrated I am about a race, because it's all good. At the end of the day, it's not what I'm here for. So I think little things like that can be a great way to witness by just being different. And I definitely could have improved on that.
No, I think you changed a ton in high school versus college. The way you react to races is totally different.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Also, going back to high school, how did you put Jesus as the center? Was it devotionals? Was it church? Like, what did you do to make sure Jesus was the center of every race and everything you did?
It's a good question. I think for me, athletics almost were just a part of my life in high school, where I didn't really think about it too much. And I think college was really where I made that transition. Whereas high school, like I would pray before races, and I guess I would to an extent. Like I would pray with teammates as well, and especially during cross country, I'd get a huddle together. We would pray before races. But I've definitely improved in that area. I think running for GCU has been huge as well, where you have other teammates who are Christians, and so almost every race we'll get together. We'll get our competitors together, and we'll get in a huddle and pray before the race. So that's huge. But then also, again, just the way you talk, especially when you're racing, people notice. Everyone's trying to identify uh, the tactics of the other teammates, and so if you carry yourself in a Christ-like manner, people will notice that. So I would say that that is huge. But as far as devotionals and whatnot, I think the big thing for me right now, and again, high school I wasn't as rooted in a lot of that stuff, but just getting in the Word at least one time a day, praying is huge. But then also community is absolutely necessary, and finding, again, it's hard in some places like high school for me. I really didn't have a Christian community, but making the effort to find a community of Christians is vital.
In college, you joined Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I think this was huge for you. So Spencer trained for 2 years, made the team, and then not to like spoil the whole story, but then you joined on the team. You were part of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You ended up doing Fellowship of Christian Athletes with kids, and you ended up mentoring those kids, and a lot of them became Christians, which is super cool. But then when you were cut from the team, one of the hardest things to lose was that community, which is super cool that you were able to build that community. And we'll go back to that. But what made you want to run for GCU? Like, what made you feel called to like start training on your own, all by yourself in Arizona heat to make the team?
It's a good question. I missed the training. It had been such a huge part of my life in high school, and having it just disappear felt wrong. So that was a huge part. But then also seeing my old teammates from middle school and high school hitting successes, and even this past week, multiple guys I used to train with were top 10 in the NCAA. So like that really inspired me to keep going. But I was thinking about this even today. It boggles my mind still how I stayed with it for 2 years to train. Because I got in contact with the coach at GCU, and I decided I wanted to come back to running, and he gave me some times to shoot for because I didn't have the standards. And so I trained myself for 2 years to hit those, and had no coach for the majority of it, not really any teammates. And I think as I look back on the journey, I realized how much God was a part of it, even when I didn't realize. That is really what pushed me through that. And so I think it's a cool reminder that the Lord is in all of our stories, and no matter where you're at in your season of life or how you think you're doing, the Lord is working in ways maybe you have no clue how. Like I thought I was just disciplined, but now looking back, it's like no, there's this little incentive that kept me going.
That's amazing. Tell the listener about how you made the team and what it was like to join the team, how it felt like a miracle, and like how you felt like God totally provided for you.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely was. It felt like a miracle, and it was in a lot of ways. So my sophomore year, I ended up going back to the FCA camp. So the FCA camp was for a bunch of Christian athletes to come mentor young high school, middle school athletes in the Phoenix area. And so it's a 3 day thing. And while I was there, I was with a couple of track athletes at GCU, and I heard from them that the distance coach had been let go. And at the moment, I was like, that's it for me. I thought, because I built a 2 year relationship with him, I thought my only door in was through him. And so I was like, well, it's been a journey, but I guess it's over. Uh, but really, God opened the door, and one of the track athletes gave me the head coach's number. And so he was the head sprint coach, and I'm a distance athlete, so I didn't think he would be able to get me in. But I ended up just sending him a text, and about 2 weeks later, he called me and was like, "Hey, I got a spot for you." Truly just a miracle. It felt like I had come to the end of the road with track, where it didn't look like the coach was going to let me on. It didn't look like there was much of a path forward. And then the Lord just cooked and opened the door.
Tell us about your camp with FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, because Spencer worked with this camp and with 7th and 8th graders over the summer. I think it was a week or a weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of this, Spencer ended up helping lots of them become Christians. And just because of his athletic abilities, they looked up to him. And I think this brought you a sense of like calling. Maybe this is what God has for me. Being a D1 athlete, having students look up to you, and then being able to share the gospel with that like platform almost.
Yeah.
Like, tell us about that experience.
Yeah. Well, the experience was really one of a kind. It's a 3 to 4 day event, and I was able to go mentor, I think it was about 8 young kids. And so these were football players. So we would coach them, we would train them, and then we'd have about 2 to 3 Bible studies a day. And the really special thing about that is the kids coming in, you don't know them, they don't know you, but there's an automatic connection because of athletics and an automatic respect. Like they come in saying, "Hey, I know I want to be D1 or I want to be pro or whatever, but this guy is already there." And so they want to hear everything you have to say. And so that's, I think, a really special aspect of being an athlete in college, especially. You do have a level of respect people give you that can be really used in a beautiful way if you use it right. But yeah, it's a really incredible experience, and really just able to share the gospel with those kids and see some crazy turnaround. Some of the loudest and most distracting kids were the kids who I had the best connection with at the end of the week, and really just saw them change. One of the kids, I thought he hated me. He was trying to distract every Bible study, and at the end of the week, he came up to me and told me, he was like, "Oh man, like you're my favorite coach, and I hope you're here next year. That was awesome." And then he texted me like 2 weeks later, and he was at a nationals for track and for middle school. He was like, "Hey coach, just want to let you know how I did."
No way,
And
I didn't even know that. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's a really cool opportunity, and I think that's a really special thing all athletes have, no matter what college you're at or high school you're at. There's a level of respect you get because you're an athlete, and you can really use that in a beautiful way. Even if it's not an athlete camp, no matter what it is, people respect the discipline you have. And if you use that and harness that to share the gospel, I think a lot of awesome things can happen.
You started cross country. You started off with a good time. You were an RA, and you're also doing all of your classes for college, your final senior year. And tell us about how that impacted your season.
Yeah, well, it was a crazy season. So, like you said, I started out the season pretty well. We got a new head coach. The team was pretty young, so we're all trying to see who's the best, who's going to be on the top 7 of the season. And so we go up to Flagstaff for our first race. Very high elevation, so not what you want for racing. But it was a great start. Started out second on the team, ran a 23:55, 4.5 mile race, and it was the fastest time ever for that course for a GCU athlete, except for the guy who beat me that race. And so it was a great start. I had a teammate tell me later he thought I was going to be an All American and that season. And so really couldn't have started out better. But almost a week, 2 weeks later, I want to say, I got sick. and that kind of was the rest of the season. That's what it looked like the rest of the year, where I just kept getting sick and sick and sick. Each sickness got worse. It came to the point where end of track season, really had to pull through to stay on the team. I hadn't really had any good races, indoor or cross country, after that first race because I just kept getting sick and I was trying to recover, and then I get sick again. And so it was like 2 months left in track, and it's like, all right, let's train as hard as we can to put myself in the best position to keep my spot. And the day after one of my best workouts for a while, just boom, got sick again, the worst one so far. Lost weight, was in bed for a week, came back from that, and I couldn't get a good enough race to stay on the team for the season. So it was an interesting time for sure, and really tested where I had my identity, because it's easy to say you have your identity in the Lord, but when you have track taken away, something you trained for 2 years for, something that you really thought God had opened the door for you, and then you see it taken away, it's like, what happened? Like, I thought this was going to be the Cinderella story. I thought this was going to be the time that everything went right finally, and it didn't. And so it was really a season where I had to trust the Lord and really build a foundation on Him through that.
That's amazing. And also you're understating like how good of a season it was. It wasn't that bad. Like you have good
It was
races
tough.
too, but
Yeah.
the hard thing is you get sick and then your coach doesn't trust you as much to do well in a race. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
even if you are doing well, you're having good practices, maybe someone else is doing better. And then your coach won't trust you as much. Running's hard. And like
Yep.
if you get sick one time, it's tough the rest of the season. So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
not like you're ill the whole time. But you also had good races. You ran the steeplechase for the first time, and that was super cool. But then
Yeah.
yeah, getting cut from the team was super tough because you did feel like God opened that door, which He totally did, and then it was just taken away from you. Tell us about your mindset in that because when you told me at first, you were like, "Well, I'm trusting God and I know God has a reason for this." And you seemed totally fine, but I knew like that was rough. And then losing
Yeah.
your teammates that you had built a connection with in the FCA, which was an amazing community, bringing God into running and just in your life in general. It's so tough to lose that community as well. Tell us how you relied on God through this, and tell a listener who may be going through the same thing what should they do and what is a good encouragement to them.
It was tough for me for sure, and it probably was one of the hardest things I've had in life. And it seems so, like, if you think about it on a big scale, it doesn't really matter. There's so many other hard things happening in the world,
But you
and
don't like know the plan for your life, so it seems
exactly,
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just seems just like out of nowhere. It seems unfair in a way, but that's the reality of sports as well, where it's very competitive, and especially right now with NCAA stuff. And so I think the biggest thing for me was, like you said, trusting the Lord. I had seen what He did the year before, getting me on the team when I didn't think it was possible, and saw Him work through that. And so in the back of my mind, I think I knew like I can trust the Lord because His plan is greater, and if even if I don't see how this is going to work, I know that He will work something out. But I didn't want to believe that in a way, and I think I wanted to just be all upset and just really allow myself to feel it. But yeah, shortly after being cut, I ended up going to a training camp called Ultimate Training Camp in Colorado, and this is with AIA, Athletes in Action. There, it was a really cool experience. There are a lot of things I took away, but the gist of it all and what really helped me through this time was at the end of the week. So it was a week long camp, and during the time they really taught lessons of how to put Christ as the center of your athletics instead of having yourself. And so the first half of the week we were really learning that, trying to apply that to some sports we played. But then at the end of the week, we had a 20-hour long race or challenge, really. And so you had a team. Some of the events were more solo. Some of the things were you had to rely on a team. And obviously, everybody was a different athlete. Some soccer players, football players, all that. So everyone was good at different things. So you had to rely on your teammates, which for me is different because obviously track is solo. And so that challenge was really interesting because it challenged me in a lot of different ways, physically, but then also mentally, having to trust teammates and pace things at a pace that they could finish it in, right? And not push to the extent I could do it and then they couldn't finish it, right? So
And you didn't know when it would end. So
exactly, yeah.
you just have to trust.
Just trust you're getting through it. Yeah. So it was very interesting, and by the end of that 20 hours, everyone was just extremely exhausted, extremely sore. And right at that point, we all got on a bus and didn't really know what was happening. And I don't want to run it for anyone who may do it in the future, but we ended up going to a hill. It's the Golgotha run. And it was about a mile long, I believe, very steep hill. And you had to get a 2x4 on your back and run up the hill. And the goal was, as you run up, pray and seek the Lord and realize that that's what He did for us. So it was supposed to be a time with you and God. So that was really a beautiful moment where I realized, like, man, I've been cut, but life goes on. And Jesus went to Golgotha to give me that life, to give me that chance. So that really helped me center on the Lord in that time and remember, like, there's so much more to life than running, and He has a plan. He had a plan in the past. I thought I was done those 2 years, and then He opened the door. So if He opened the door then, He can open the door now.
That's so good. Going back to that hill, you're remembering like what Jesus did for us. And there's so much more to life than running or like whatever you have going on. I think that's a great thing to put into whatever sport you're doing. Like realizing that it's nothing for yourself. You may get sick, you may get injured, and it's all gone. And so the only reason for what you're doing is to glorify God. That's the only thing that's going to give you purpose in that. It's a good way to remember what He did for us, to motivate us to give Him glory
Yeah,
through your sport, whatever you're gifted in.
and it will give us the strength to do what we need to do.
You had a friend who was in football, and tell us about his situation.
Yeah, so that was a crazy moment at the camp. There are a bunch of different athletes you meet every level, D1 to NAIA. And going in, I felt like an imposter in a way because I'd just been cut. All these athletes, some of them going to the NFL, very good athletes. And here I am, Mr. Washed Up. And, and so, it was a little daunting. And so they had a Bible study. A couple guys we would meet every day. And one of the guys in the group was a football player for Tennessee. And so I was talking to him and hearing his story, and he was saying how he was great RB for Tennessee, and he had great draft stock, so probably going to go to the NFL, have a great career. And in the middle of a practice at the end of the season, it may have been spring training even, so when it really wasn't too important, he blew out his calf or his Achilles, and he may never be able to play again because of that. So when I heard that story, I was like, oh, okay, like I need to not complain about my situation because that's a lot worse. So, but it was incredibly powerful to see the way he centered on the Lord and really just dug into the Word and dug into praying and seeking the Lord during that time, and still to this day, and really just used the Lord as his strength to push past that. And so maybe he's going to play again, maybe not. He doesn't know, but you could see a man who had his faith and his trust in the Lord through that, and that was very encouraging.
That's amazing. Even if you're injured for like a season, maybe that's nothing compared to getting cut from the team or having your Achilles blow, but it feels so hard in the moment. And yeah, even some situations, maybe you're struggling because God wants to give you that power to influence and encourage others. Tell us about the other camp you went to. You're a camp counselor in Illinois with kids in poor areas. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was, and also a very helpful thing for me during that time. And so yeah, I ended up getting an opportunity to go work for a camp in Illinois. It was a month-long camp, and so it was basically a bunch of middle schoolers to mid high schoolers from the Chicago area. And so every week we get a new group of kids, and the goal is really to share the gospel and give them the opportunity to do things that maybe they couldn't before. And so it was a really cool experience where I was able to use my faith, but also use my experience in athletics to share the gospel and to be a mentor and an influence for the kids. It wasn't an athletic camp, but it was really cool to see how, even though I was cut, even though I wasn't where I wanted to be athletically, God was still using the story I had to witness to those kids. And I was able to see a lot of really incredible stories and incredible turnarounds with a lot of the kids. I had one night, it was like midway through the camp, and just we were sitting in a camping tent, just talking with the kids, and four of them like, "Hey, can you help us? We want to become a Christian." And so it's just a really beautiful moment and a reminder that like even if you're in a place where you feel like, God, this is not the story I had, God is still using that story in incredible ways, and there during those trials, there are incredible ways God will use you and He wants to use you. And so it's important to allow Him to use you and not just like hunker down or just kind of change who you are because of a disappointment in the area of life, but just continue to serve the Lord and seek Him.
Remember that, like, even though they may have looked up to you because you're a human athlete, they also looked up to you because of your faith and because of your athletics, even if they didn't know you're D1. So even though you're like cut from the team, I think that was a great way of God showing you like He'll use you whether or not you make the team. And then tell us about the opportunity that came in Illinois.
Yeah. So while I was there, I ended up getting reached out to from a coach at a school in Illinois. And so I ended up going out for a visit and really considered going there. It was the best school that I had been reached out to from during that time. And so went on a visit, got to meet the coach, got to meet some of the teammates, and really had decided to go for it. So I left the camp, and it would have been like 2 weeks after going back home to Arizona that I'd have to go out and start the semester there and start training. And I still didn't know what credits would transfer and all that. And so 3 days before I would have to fly out, I finally was given the answer that uh, none of my credits would really transfer, and I would still have another 2 years of school. Whereas at GCU, I just had one semester left. So that was another time where it's like, all right, the answer is no, I'm not going there. We'll trust the Lord that maybe there's something else. But I really just, yeah, from that camp, had the opportunity, but realized that it didn't make sense. And so just hunkered down, decided to stay at GCU, not running on the team, but just finish up my last semester.
Yeah, so you ended up getting cut from the team, and then you tried to make this other team. It seems like, again, like from God, an amazing opportunity. So then it's another door shut for running. How did you feel after that, and how did you trust God that maybe running isn't God's plan for the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The whole time, that whole journey where I was caught, it was helpful to realize running doesn't really matter that much. And like you mentioned earlier, the Lord was able to use me at the camp despite the fact that I wasn't on the team anymore. And so I think, yeah, that opportunity closing, realizing that I wasn't going to go anywhere the fall, and really didn't know if I was going to run again. I thought it may be over, period, at that point. I think it really helped me root in the Lord and realize that, like, looking back on the year, the best parts about it have been the community, it had been the coaches, the team, the other athletes, the friends, all of that type of stuff.
Which you still had.
It
You
still
could
had,
still go to
yeah.
FCA. You could still see your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was a good reminder that, like, yeah, I can still do these things, and those are the best parts. And there will be a point where running ends, and that can't be the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, right? And so it was, yeah, a great way to just root myself in the Lord. And it almost was like a time of life where I was able to like see who I was in the mirror without running. When you're constantly training, constantly focused on improving in one thing, and all your friends are training for that same thing, you're focused on that thing. But when it's taken away, it really allowed me to just kind of realize, like, oh, there are some things that I need to change in, or some things that I do that I didn't even realize I did. And so it almost was like a time period to just look in the mirror and kind of ground myself in the Lord and grow in Him, and see things that I needed to improve in. So that was a really special time.
That's awesome. I just had a podcast with Margot, our sister, and she was talking about the time of small things where it's important to just rest in the Lord. And you don't always have to be like, go, go, go. Like, it's okay to rest and let go of something that maybe was your identity, something that people will think well of you for doing, but just resting in God and not worrying about doing everything perfect according to like other standards. So that's great that you had time to like, rest and regroup with like you and God and
Yeah.
rebuild that relationship. And then now you're coming back to running. Tell us about how you got back on the team and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a really last minute decision. I kind of realized, I think it was about 3 weeks left in the fall semester. It's about to graduate and realized now that my NCAA eligibility had started, it was gonna run out. Like it didn't pause, even though I wasn't in the NCAA. And so I realized, okay, if I want to run again, I have to commit now to deciding, or else it's just gonna run out and I'll have no decision. And so started reaching out to coaches again, bunch of random colleges, and it was in that time I learned that the coach that had kicked me off the team wasn't the head coach. I thought the head coach and the distance coach, who's coach over me, they come together and decided, but I found out that it was just the distance coach. The head coach didn't really even know. And so that kind of surprised me, and I kind of just tucked that away, really didn't do anything with it. But then about 2 weeks left in the semester, I got back from a run, and I was like, man, like, what if I just reach out? What if I reach out to him and let him know, hey, like I think I could do a great job under you. I think I could do better under in the 800 because I've been doing the longer stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like if I do, and he says no, then I'm in the same situation I am now. And if I don't, then I'm in the same situation I am now. So no harm in just reaching out. And so I did, and really again, the Lord just worked in that. He put it on my mind to do it, and He worked. He opened the door. And so 30 minutes later, I got a message back from him, and he reached out and he's like, "Hey, let's meet next week." And so met up with him, talked for a bit, and he gave me a spot again. So again, just crazy turn of events. Really, I've never heard of someone getting cut from a team and then getting back on the team 7 months later. But it really was like cool because looking back, if I had stayed on the team, if I hadn't been cut, I probably would have had another terrible season, training too high mileage, getting sick constantly, doing races that weren't for me. But instead, God cut me, and I was like, that makes no sense. That's not my story. But God said, wait, just watch. And then He gave me the chance to come back doing the event that's better for me, that I was more successful in. And so that was really cool to see how even when it seemed like everything was falling apart, it was actually God putting it back together and putting it back together in a better way. And so I think that's one of the biggest things I took away from that was even if you're going through a trial and no matter what you're going through, it's probably for your good. And the Lord is working um, overtime for your benefit. And so it's going to be hard during it for sure, but you can trust knowing that at the end of the day, most of the time it's probably going to come out better. Not always, but a lot of the time.
Like we have this like smaller perspective, and it's so hard to trust God, but He has way bigger of a perspective. Like He knows every part of your life, so we can totally trust Him. But
Yeah.
yeah, when you're cut from the team, it seems like there's no hope. And then now seeing you didn't have to run all that mileage in cross country, which wasn't really your goal anyway. The 800 was your goal. So now you're on the team, you're running the 800 indoor and outdoor, and you're improving, and the coach doesn't have that much pressure on you because you haven't been running. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
almost like a win-win. Like there's not a ton of pressure. You're able to train with the team, and the coach is totally for you. So
Yeah.
tell us about that mindset and what mindset you had going into the race, knowing you were cut the season before. Like that's a lot of pressure to have on yourself, knowing you didn't think you were gonna run like track
Yeah.
again, and now you have this chance. You don't want to mess it up, but you also can't get in your head because then
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
races might not go well. So how did you trust God before
Yeah.
races?
I think it was a really cool time, and it almost was the same thought process I had when I first got on the team with the first race, where I just kind of realized, like, man, I did nothing to get here, and it is the Lord just blessed to open this door. And I guess like I obviously trained together, but
Yes.
um, but it was the Lord working, and so I almost felt no pressure. I think some of those races are some of my favorite mentally, where I was just excited to be there and just grateful, and it's like who cares what happens? I'm here. I'm wearing a GCU jersey again, and let's just go rip it and see what happens. And so those have been really some of the most freeing races. But I think my overall mindset going into the season was just like you said, like I realized how unsignificant athletics are, and I kind of like my time off, the 7 months I wasn't on the team. It almost felt like I had just gotten into my career at that point, and so coming back, it really just felt like a second chance. And this time though, I was like, the importance I'd given it before, it's like, oh my goodness, like I'm on a D1 team, like this is crazy. This time it was more of like, yeah, it's awesome, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, the Lord is the most important thing. And so I hope I can do well, but I also hope that I don't waste the opportunity the Lord gave me in putting myself as the priority when the Lord gave me the chance to come back so that I can spread the gospel or be a witness on the team. And so I think that was a mindset shift. And it's something I still need to work on, especially this next season. It's my last year. I really want to go into the season looking to be a friend and someone who can change the lives of many people on the team with the gospel instead of focusing on my own success.
Yeah, because you have teammates who are going through the same things. It's so tough being an athlete. Like, you're really
Yeah.
putting so much pressure on yourself, and it's so hard to trust God through that. So you can be a witness to so many teammates and even other runners, like
Yeah.
runners who are
Yeah.
just running for fun. Like, it's super cool the impact you can have. But tell a listener who maybe you're in high school and you're running and it's super tough. You have anxiety before races, or you're trying to make a certain time to get into a college team, D1, D2, D3, whatever it is, and you're putting a ton of pressure on yourself. What would you tell that athlete who is going through all that anxiety before races, trying to make a certain team, trying to make a certain time?
Yeah.
How can
With
they
that
trust
stress.
God with that stress?
I think, I mean, no one's perfect. And I would have almost every race of the season, I have a different mindset. And sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad. But I think the biggest thing, some of the races where I'm like, oh, that was, I went in it pretty good, pretty unstressed, was thinking of how God viewed it. Because I think as easy as an athlete or as in anything in life, really, it's like the thing I'm doing right now is not on God's priority. God doesn't really care. Like He's glad I'm doing it, but it's not like there are a lot of other things He's
It's not your
more.
only like gift in life.
Yeah, yeah. But the reality is God does care. Like He wants us to do well. He wants us to succeed. And He wants to bless us. And so I think realizing that, like going into race, instead of being like, oh no, hopefully I can hit this time, or man, hopefully I can hang on. Is there going to be a pacer? Do I have to take this out all on my own? Like what's going to happen? Instead of thinking of that, realizing like I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give it everything, and then I'm going to trust the Lord to be there for me, because at the end of the day, I know God is on my side. I know God wants me to do well. And so I'm just going to go and not think about how it could go wrong. I'm going to think about how God wants me to do well, and trust Him in that. And that just gives a lot of relief and, yeah, just peace going into the races.
That's so good. That's so much like freedom knowing God already has gone through that race. He already knows
Yeah.
like exactly what time you're gonna get, what like pacers you're gonna have, if it's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
rain or if it's gonna be hot. Like God knows exactly what the plan is, and so yeah, trusting Him, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there a certain verse that you lean on or
Mm.
scripture that you lean on?
I think the chapter that I think of often is Mark 4, where Jesus is in the boat and the disciples are going across the river and there's a storm coming up, and Jesus is sleeping in the boat, and his disciples are all getting worried. They wake him up and he's like, "Guys, what are you doing?" And then he just calms the wind and the waves, and then they go about their day. And the disciples are like, "What did he just do? Who is this?" It's a reminder that when we see a storm, he doesn't see a storm. He's in control of it, and for him, he's sleeping in it. He's calm, he's relaxed. And if he can do that, we can do that too. So remembering that in a race is helpful. But also, like if you're cut from the team, like it's a great reminder he really is in control, and when you see a storm, he doesn't see a storm. And I think the beautiful thing about that verse and about the reality of storms in our lives, so I guess this is less of a verse before a race but more of a verse or chapter
Scripture, yeah.
for the trials in life. Yeah, but you really, I don't know where I heard this from, but someone said that when you face a trial, instead of thinking, oh no, like this is terrible, obviously it's hard, but if you trust the Lord, you ask Him to come help with it, you really get a front row seat to seeing a miracle in your life. And it's really special in that way. And so realizing that and remembering that in any situation, in every trial, is really, really huge for getting through it.
Yeah, that scripture is so cool because Jesus is literally in the boat with the disciples and they're worried. and literally the Son of God, like fully man and fully God, fully has all divine powers to be able to like heal and like calm the storm. Like, how are they afraid with God there? But then we have Jesus in our hearts, like when we're saved, and God is literally everywhere. Like, how are we afraid when
Yeah.
there are challenges? But that's so cool. A race or whatever, like maybe a basketball game or whatever sport or whatever situation you're in that's like stressful, like totally giving it to God who is fully in control, fully
Yeah.
knows the future. He's the only person you can fully give control to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an amazing scripture to go into a race with. And then to end this podcast, the question of this podcast is, what is the biggest lesson you've learned on your walk with God? So after becoming a Christian, the walk is usually the hardest. Well, it is the hardest part,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
being consistent, trusting God through all these trials, just like you're explaining. What has been the biggest lesson, running related or not?
It's a good question. I mean, there's so many things, but I think for me, it really just comes down to trust in the Lord, like we've gone over so many times. But He really has a plan, and it's easy for anybody and everybody to plan out their life. Like, even for me, like I made the team, so it seemed reasonable to think now I'm going to succeed in the NCAA. I had a good first race, so yeah, it makes sense. But that wasn't the plan. And I think it's so easy to make your own story, your own plan. And I had done that. And I think that made it harder when it didn't happen. There's a verse in the Bible that speaks to that where it says, don't go and tell your neighbor, I'm going to do this tomorrow, or I'm going to go here tomorrow, because you don't know what your tomorrow holds. And so, really remembering that, and not in a way of saying, okay, I'm not going to try to do anything, I'm not going to work on it, but in a way of saying, I'm going to push for this, I'm going to work for this, but at the end of the day, I'm going to trust the Lord for how it goes. There's really a lot of confidence you can have in that. And I think that makes it a lot harder too when it doesn't go your way, when you have it planned out. Where you're like, wait, what? This is not the story. But if you're trusting the Lord, and you're like, well, I don't know what the story
Yeah.
is.
Like you work as hard as you can to reach your goals, but at any point,
Yeah,
like God can take it away. Like you don't know what
yeah,
his plan holds. And like you're saying, trusting God is so important. And then with trusting God, instead of just like blind trust, like you do have to be constantly going to God. Like God wants
yeah,
us to build a relationship with him. And so like you're saying, you're not just sitting back, relaxing, doing nothing. You're like constantly working to know what God's will is.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You have so much good advice, and comment down below if you want Spencer back and if you have a topic you want him to talk about. But do you have any last words?
Honestly, just yeah, trust the Lord. If you're in a time of being cut from the team per se, like just trust the Lord. He has a plan, and sometimes the next step forward is whatever makes the most sense. Even if you don't feel the Lord telling you to do something and you're trying to seek direction, the Lord speaks in the obvious things sometimes. And so just keep pursuing the Lord, trusting Him, surround yourself with good friends, and then just see how the Lord develops the path in front of you, and just keep walking, and you'll see what the right direction is.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on today, and
Thank you.
I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.